It's a much bigger picture, as you all know and I know, and I'm delighted to be joined by a uniquely qualified man to comment upon it all, and that's Michael Grade, Lord Grade, who is the former chair not only of the BBC but also ITV, and I don't know anyone else who has done both of those. Lord Grade, a very good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon, Alistair.
Is it the worst that you've seen in terms of public disquiet, public disaffection with the corporation?
No, they do get themselves into a muddle from time to time, and this is one of those cases. It demonstrates really how out of touch they are with their core audience. Anything more designed to upset the core BBC fans, the people who love the Proms, than coming up with this ridiculous idea of not singing the lyrics to Rule Britannia is just beggars belief. It's just idiotic, really.
But the other thing that struck me about it, Michael, is that it was so inept. It was such a demonstration of having lost exactly that grip you describe, because they did have, weeks, if not months ago, a perfectly plausible explanation. They couldn't be bothered to give it.
I don't agree with that. I mean, I agree that it's been a muddle. I don't think there's any plausible explanation for dropping the lyrics. It's just too woke to be believable, frankly. And it's classic BBC talking to itself and not understanding the public mood and public attitudes.
The more worrying aspect, and this is something certainly that you wrestled with, all chairmen and director generals of the BBC wrestle with, is the funding model. Social media is now awash, not only with comment about Land of Hope and Glory and Rule Britannia, but by the hashtag defund the BBC brigade, swelling in numbers by the hour.
Well, I've always said that the license fee can only survive as long as there is public support for it. And we don't, social media is not an accurate judge. The silent majority probably outnumbered by zillions the social media people who are jumping on the bandwagon. And the BBC will always have enemies. The question really is, what is the future for the BBC? The world has changed dramatically. And we need a long and healthy debate about what is the vision for the BBC, for public service broadcasting. Do we need it in the current media scene with all that's going on? If we do, what is it we need from the BBC and how should we pay for it? It's a big, big debate, and the BBC should be leading that debate, which of course they're not. They're trying to hang on to what they've got and looking for an ever-increasing license fee. I don't think that'll wash going forward.
It's also a critical alignment of the stars, isn't it? And I said about you being uniquely qualified as a former boss of both the BBC and ITV. Right now, in the next few weeks, few months, we've got the new Director General, Tim Davie. He's been appointed. He'll take over. Secondly, heads are being scratched about who the next chair of the BBC should be. There's a bit of a reshuffle going on with Ofcom about editorial balance and the policing of that and what have you. Who's the key figure in that, Michael, and who do you want to see holding the reins?
Well, what one always wants to see in the appointment of the chairman, which is what I went through, which was a very competitive process of interviews. People apply for the job. Ultimately, the government will approve the chairman, not the Director General, but they will approve the appointment of the chairman. What we want to see is somebody, I think, with some editorial experience and somebody who will not be captured by the status quo merchants at the BBC. All great institutions spend their lives trying to defend the turf that they own. It's time for the BBC to have a serious look at itself in the new digital world, and the chairman or chairwoman must lead that and must be qualified to lead that.
Does someone who has worked before at the top level of government preclude themselves from being considered?
No, I don't think so. I don't think any individual, whatever their political persuasion and political experience, will ever be able to impose any kind of editorial positioning of the BBC. It just doesn't work that way. If a chairman tried to do that, the BBC would be out on the street in 2 minutes. I've been there myself when I was the controller of BBC One, when the governors in those days banned a programme which I didn't agree with, and we were out on the streets. So it's beyond the influence of any single person, the BBC.
And finally, how significant is the Ofcom decisions, or are the Ofcom decisions? Because we talked about funding, and I completely hear what you say about don't get it out of proportion, remember the silent majority, etc., etc. But the suggestion that BBC News needs to look at its soul occasionally about editorial impartiality, whether it's on-screen reporters writing stuff in magazines or whatever, Ofcom has a role in that, should have a role in that, needs it beefed up?
Oh, it does have a role in that. In the last go-round of the BBC Charter, Ofcom was given responsibility for policing the editorial impartiality of the BBC, and it very much has a role. I'm very surprised to see leading journalists of the BBC writing blogs, offering opinions. That is not something we ever want to see from anybody associated. If you want to go and write opinionated blogs, don't be a journalist at the BBC. It's not acceptable.
Is it worse than not acceptable, Michael? Emily Maitlis was hauled across the coals for a lead-in that was judged to be inappropriate, and
that wasn't a blog, that was on air.
Yeah.
And that would have gone through the editorial processes of Newsnight, and it would have been passed by some. Personally, I wouldn't have passed it, but others did pass it. Once you're into the blogosphere, there's no editorial filters, there's no editorial approvals from senior people. That's what makes it so dangerous.
Should Richard Sambrook, who's looking into this final point, because I've just realised we've overrun, but we're learning much, and that is the whole purpose of the conversation, Michael. Richard Sambrook, who you work with very closely, a very senior editorial figure at the BBC, is looking at exactly that, social media, what have you. Should his report, if it's to be credible, simply say, stop, don't do it, be on telly or be elsewhere, you can't do both?
Don't forget radio. Yes, I would agree with that. I don't think any BBC journalist should be writing opinion pieces, politically loaded opinion pieces.
Michael Grade, seriously, always a pleasure to talk to you, and whether it's privately or publicly, I always learn so much. Thank you very much indeed for your time, as always. That's Michael Grade, Lord Grade, former chair of the BBC and chair also of ITV, giving his thoughts